Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. We had another doubleheader in the NBA last night in the second round of the playoffs. Frankly, neither game proved to be that exciting. They both ended up being blowouts, and it looks like the Brooklyn Nets, Sap, as I aptly predicted months ago, are going to just roll through every team and on their way to an NBA championship.
Well, they're up 2-0 after two pretty easy home wins over the Milwaukee Bucks, right, in the Eastern Conference semifinals. I picked the Bucks in this series. I got the Bucks going to the NBA Finals. They're going to have to get off their asses and start to play real good basketball. And I don't even know if they're capable of it at this point. Look, Brooklyn's not even clicking on all cylinders. I mean, Kevin Durant is playing at a different level, but that's not really a surprise, right? So far this year in the postseason, Jet, he's shooting 55% from the floor, 50% from three, and 91% from the free throw line. So we always talk about 50, 40, 90 in those three categories.
Right.
That's an outstanding season. He's even better than that in the postseason. He's so efficient. We both agree he's the most unstoppable force we've ever seen on a basketball court. Not in terms of dominance like Wilt Chamberlain or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Shaq or even Michael Jordan, but in terms of the variety in his game. He's a phenomenal three-point shooter. He's got a great mid-range game. He can go to the basket with either hand. He can go right. He can go left. He can post up. He's great in transition. I mean, it's kind of scary how to defend him. You just kind of hope he misses. And certainly Milwaukee hasn't been able to get him to do that yet. Kyrie Irving was fine last night, but then other players are stepping up for the Brooklyn Nets. Meanwhile, Milwaukee, they haven't stepped up, including Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I can't even say his name correctly. I'll just continue to call him the Greek Freak because he's going to have to get better as a player in the postseason for me to learn how to pronounce his last name. So we'll just call him Giannis for now. He's 2 for 10 from the free throw line in this series. 2 for 10 from the free throw line in this series. Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant so far in the postseason are 115 for 126 from the free throw line. They've only missed 11 free throws in 126 attempts throughout the postseason so far. And last night, or so far in this series, Giannis is 2 for 10. That's not going to get it done. The Milwaukee Bucks, Jet, are 14 of 57 from three. That's below 25%. Do you realize that while the Bucks were getting destroyed by the Brooklyn Nets last night, the Bruins in the NHL were losing to the New York Islanders 5-4 in a big Game 5 at TD Garden. Now the Islanders lead that series 3-2. The Islanders scored 5 goals on 19 shots. The Islanders had a higher shooting percentage in a hockey game than Milwaukee had from three-point territory last night. That shows you how good the Islanders were, maybe how bad Tuukka Rask was, and how awful the Milwaukee Bucks have been shooting threes in this series so far. 14 of 57. That's below 25%. That's something they need to do a lot better. That's their chance of winning is Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday stepping up, and they just haven't been able to. And it kind of maybe leads us back to Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton being really good players, but they're on again, off again, all-star caliber players. They're not perennial all-stars. So they're probably best suited to be your third and fourth guy on your team. And if they are, then you've got a hell of a team. Now they're both being asked to be like 2A and 2B to Giannis. And now you have to question, is Giannis really a 1? He's one of the 5 or 6 or 7 best players in the league, but that doesn't make him a 1 because he's limited offensively. And we saw it again last night.
Yeah, I still think he is. I just think you don't really know if somebody's a true 1 until you give them a true number 2 in that regard.
Good point.
It's also, Sap, this is my concern all along, is that as great as some other teams might look on paper, and I think that on paper, Milwaukee looks excellent, and I thought that they had the personnel to slow down Brooklyn, but it just there's no slowing down Brooklyn. It doesn't matter if you have the personnel to do it. Kevin Durant's unflappable, unguardable. He doesn't have bad games. He's just that efficient. He does not play poorly. And then, you're kind of hoping that everybody else plays poorly, but Brooklyn has enough. Even without James Harden, they have enough guys who can, fill in the gaps. It's just so hard to beat them. And last night, if you don't play, this is what the problem was when you played the Warriors. If you don't play perfect when the Warriors were really good, you couldn't beat them. It's the same thing basically for the Nets. If you don't play perfect, you can't beat them. And if you play far less than perfect, like what Milwaukee did last night, you get blown out. And that was a blowout. It was a blowout from the get-go, 125-86. I mean, that's a mauling. You don't see that in the second round of the playoffs very often. So, today everybody's on Milwaukee. Stephen A. Smith's calling them a national embarrassment. And they should be embarrassed that these games haven't been competitive, especially without James Harden. But, this is the way I sort of saw it happening months ago, is that as good as these other teams looked, Brooklyn is just they're just so much better than everybody else. I am surprised that they're able to do this dominantly without James Harden. I'll say that, but I'm not surprised they're winning this series and that they won both of those games. I'm disappointed that Middleton has not stepped up and Holiday has not stepped up. I mean, Giannis, I think he played great in the first game. He played fine in this game, other than the free throw shooting was terrible and he didn't score quite enough, but he did have 11 rebounds and he played, I guess he played okay defense. It's just, Brooklyn's just that good, Sap. I don't even know if I can fault teams for losing to them at this point.
Well, you can if they lose by 39. And in game one, the final score was a lot closer than the feel of that game, because Milwaukee scored, I think, like 12 of the final 15 points in that game to tighten up the final score. But this hasn't been a series so far. And we go back to Giannis, and I think that the flaw in his game is he really can't shoot from the outside. Now, that's a major concern. He is willing to take those outside shots, which Ben Simmons isn't comfortable taking. The difference is Ben Simmons has Joel Embiid as his number one guy, where Giannis has a 3 and a 4 and Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday. So he has to do more of that than obviously Ben Simmons can do on a nightly basis. The other thing, and I've said this for a million years, well, not quite a million years because Giannis hasn't been in the league that long. I like him in the low post better, or you use him in a pick and roll situation where you can send him to the rim and have Middleton or Drew Holiday or anyone else feed him up near the basket. That's where he's unstoppable. He's not quite as big as Shaq was. I mean, Shaq was 350 pounds. Giannis is about 250, but he's more athletic than Shaq was. Get him in those situations. Why he brings the ball up the court so much still mystifies me. He's a good passer, but he can pass from the post where he's closer to the basket. Why would you take a guy who's so dominant close to the basket and have him operating 25, 30 feet away from the basket? Doesn't seem to make much sense. Now, LeBron does that a lot, but LeBron goes to the basket better than Giannis because he's a better passer than Giannis, so there's more options for him. But why not get him coming off the wing, having him set pick and roll situations where he dashes to the cup, or just get him down low where he's unstoppable at 6'11", 250 with athleticism that's comparable to Russell Westbrook's. I just don't understand why you ignite your offense with Giannis. It should be run through Drew Holiday or someone else who can get Giannis in scoring position for some easy baskets. So he's not facing, 18, 22-foot shots, which he's just not comfortable hitting. He just isn't. That's not his game. So why ask him to do more of that? Ask him to do less of it, make him more efficient. That's the thing that makes it so scary, Jet, playing the Brooklyn Nets, is how efficient they are. Like, Durant's this ridiculous scorer, but I don't even know if I've seen anyone in 45, 50 years of watching basketball, and that includes LeBron and Michael Jordan and Kobe and, Kareem and Shaq and all of these dominant players who's even close to being as efficient as Durant, right? Like, he might be the only guy I've ever seen who is a shooter and a scorer. Usually one or the other. Like, Steph Curry to me is a shooter. Klay Thompson's a shooter. LeBron, Michael, Kobe were more scorers than shooters, right? And you got Shaq and Kareem were just dominant down low. This guy is an all-time great shooter and an all-time great scorer. And he does it so effortlessly, all within the flow of the game. It doesn't seem like they have to do anything special to get him going. He gets himself going. I don't know. It's damn scary watching them play. I've got to, give you some props on this. I mean, they're not quite halfway through winning a championship, but boy, do they look good. And maybe the Celtics weren't that bad. They went 5 games with them and played them tough in a couple other games. So maybe the Celtics weren't as bad as we thought they were. And maybe Brooklyn's just better than we thought they were.
No, the Celtics are terrible.
That's true too. Except for Jason Tatum, who Kevin Durant praises up and down and down and up, and Kevin Durant doesn't praise other players. Probably, yeah. So we'll see Jason Tatum in Brooklyn in like 3 years or whatever, and that'll be a lot of fun as Durant's 35 and still scoring 30 a game.
Yeah, I think that the issue is with Durant is that also, part of it is in the NBA, and I'm going to sound like the cranky old guys. You can't be physical really anymore, so you
No,
can't hand check, you can't move him off his spot, and I think that would affect him. Listen, he's still going to score no matter what. In any era,
yeah,
he would score, but I think the only way that you could try to play some defense on him and bother him is to be physical with him because he is a twig. You can move him. He's not strong. Um,
sure is.
I mean, he can just shoot over you, but that's besides the point. I'm saying since you can't hand check and you can't really put your hands on anybody, you can't like move somebody. There's no way to defend him. It's basically like what a wide receiver is in football right
Right.
now. You can't you
Yep.
just can't touch them. So if they get off the block and they get past you, there's nothing you can do about it. And so for Durant, basically he's off the block the entire time. You can't touch him. And because his biggest weakness is strength, that doesn't come into play at all in the modern NBA. It doesn't matter. You don't have the way he plays, he doesn't have to be physically strong. It makes no difference to him one way or the other. I think you said this before when they asked him when he did like one rep at the combine of lifting a bench press. He said, well, how much does a basketball weigh? Doesn't make a
Right.
difference to him. So that would be the one way to combat him, but you can't do it. It's against the rules. I am surprised that Milwaukee through 2 games has not tried to be more physical in general as a team. I thought that was their big advantage over Brooklyn. Is Brooklyn is not built that way, and I thought that with guys like PJ Tucker and Giannis uh, and Drew Holiday, they would try to bother Brooklyn from a physicality standpoint. And if they have, I haven't noticed. It might just be a matter of Brooklyn is that good, but the scary thing and the bad thing for Milwaukee, Sap, is they have no avenue now to get any better. This is as good of a roster as they can compile. They have no way to improve it because they've sent all their draft capital out to acquire Drew Holiday. And a move I didn't dislike. I think that they needed to upgrade, and Drew Holiday was an upgrade. But now they have no mechanism to get better because nobody's signing there in free agency. Even as great as Giannis is, no one's recruiting players to Milwaukee. That's just it's not going to happen. So if Brooklyn is what I think they are, they should have about a 3-year window here, and Milwaukee is going to be just actively blocked during Giannis's prime by this team that just appears to be so much better than everybody else.
And Brooklyn's doing this without James Harden, who's played less than 1 minute in this series. And I always looked at James Harden as the most irreplaceable player on the Brooklyn Nets, Durant being the best player, Kyrie being the most entertaining to watch. I know Celtic fans despise him, but as a pure basketball fan, you have to admire the skill level of Kyrie Irving. But I always thought that James Harden was the guy they couldn't win without. Well, they're winning without him right now, and they're doing it comfortably to the point where maybe he doesn't even have to play in this series. That's why I thought last night was such a big game for Milwaukee. If they could have evened the series, maybe it forces Brooklyn to rush James Harden back into the lineup. That's not going to be the case. He could probably sit out the rest of this series and they're still going to win. And then they move on to the Eastern Conference Finals. They'll have some ample rest because you kind of get the feeling that Atlanta, Philly might be a 6-game series. So that would give Brooklyn a head start into the conference finals. No, it's very scary. And you bring up a great point about you can't be physical in today's NBA. So Kevin Durant, he feels like a wide receiver. He's Randy Moss or the great quarterback who you can't touch, who's just going to complete 70% of his passes. I mean, he's that good. He really is. And look, this is all about legacy for him because if he wins a title here, he'd be the best player on 3 championship teams in 2 different cities. Chances are if they win the championship, he'll be the finals MVP because the guy is so damn consistent. This is all about legacy for Kevin Durant at this point. He's always been kind of the second best player in the league, or at least for the last 7-8 years behind LeBron. He just doesn't have the total skill set that LeBron has in terms of rebounding and passing and defending and leading and all that stuff. But man, to put the basket in the hoop, to put the basketball into the hoop, I've never seen anything like it. I really haven't. And I've been watching a long time. Like I said, he's almost a giant version of George Gervin, but with 3-point range. And George Gervin led this league in scoring multiple times, was always first or second team All-NBA, was always an MVP candidate. This guy is 4 inches taller, with a better handle, more range, and more efficiency. Just think of that. Think how damn scary this guy is.
Yeah, no, he's an incredible player. And I think, obviously his legacy will be bolstered if he wins another title, but people are still not going to give him full credit
Right.
because he's on another super team. And he won't acknowledge that. He'll say, give me all the credit, full credit. I deserve it. And maybe he does, but he's never going to get it because that's why I was surprised at the time that he was so on board with the Harden thing, because I thought they could win without Harden, win a championship. It would obviously have been harder, but he would have gotten a lot more credit. Now with Harden in the mix, it just looks like it's Warriors 2.0, and people are going to say, well, you just jumped from one super team to the other. He's never going to be embraced by fans as a whole because of how he's won those 2 championships and possibly a third this year. And I think it's going to continue to be a constant thing with him on Twitter and social media. People are going to know exactly what his soft spot is, and they're going to give him crap about it, and he's going to fire back, and it's going to be a never-ending thing. It is going to be difficult at the end of the day to put him over some people because of the teams he was on. You kind of almost don't fully know how great he could be if he was on a team in his prime sort of by himself or with maybe just one other star player.
Well, you know how I rank all the players, and I have Durant in the top 20 already. I think he has the potential to move into the top 10, but who does he supplant in that top 10? I mean, I have Oscar Robertson at number 10. Maybe he supplants Oscar Robertson if he has 3-4 championships. Maybe that would be the case. And again, it's difficult to rank players pre-merger and post-merger. It's like a completely different sport. Hell, it's a different sport than it was 20 years ago. It's a different sport than it was 10 years ago. Can he supplant Kobe Bryant? That's going to be a difficult one because Kobe won 3 titles with Shaq, and Shaq was the driving force on those teams. He was the best player on those teams. But then Kobe reinvented himself and won back-to-back titles with Paul Gasol as the second best player. Now, Gasol's going to go in the Hall of Fame, but he's not an all-time great player, and Kobe was able to win back-to-back titles with Gasol. That's when his legacy really grew. I think that LeBron's legacy has grown. Yes, he's always had some sort of great player with him, whether it's Dwayne Wade, Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, but he's gone to 3 different organizations and won rather quickly. I mean, turned around losing situations. So, he's not going to replace LeBron James or Michael Jordan or, can he supplant Larry Bird? I don't think, because Bird was a much better rebounder and a much better passer. And I think that the thing about Durant, I don't know how he makes other players better. Like, that's really tough to prove, right? Like, we see Chris Paul, and we're going to talk about the Suns win over Denver in game 1 of their series. Chris Paul seems to make guys better around him. I don't know if Durant makes anyone better. He does make the team better because he's so
great.
Well, it's
impossible to know, Sap, because of the teams he's played on. It's impossible to tell.
It's probably easy to make Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Kyrie
we already
Irving,
knew they were great,
Harden look good. They were already great before he got to them. Whereas, players like LeBron and Bird, Magic, certainly, they had great players around them. I'm not taking anything away from all the guys they play with, but you could see where they enhanced those players. We don't know that about Durant. So yeah, this is all about legacy for Durant, and he can finish top 15, I think, which is saying a lot. And I know the Durant fans will go, what do you mean top 15? He's one of the 5 greatest players ever. Okay, well, he's not better than Bill Russell or Wilt Chamberlain or Magic or Bird, I don't think. I mean, he's only 32. So, if he plays another 5-6 years, maybe that discussion comes.
But this is the drawback to being a mercenary.
That's what happens,
what
right?
Become.
Yeah. In 2 years, if he says, you know what, I'm going to go join Giannis in Milwaukee, not that he would, but along those lines, and then they win a title. I mean, he is a mercenary. Hasn't become one. He is one. And the thing with him is be comfortable with it, because that's what you are. He doesn't seem to want to get the praise and the pushback. You can't have it all. You can't have it both ways. You are a mercenary. Kind of embrace it the way, other players have in the past.
Just a thought that popped into my mind, Sap, that is intriguing to me. If it's Clippers Nets in the finals and the Clippers were able to win, does that vault Kawhi over Durant?
No.
That would be 3 titles to 2.
Right.
And presumably 3 finals MVPs, because I mean that's just what he does in the finals. Is it a discussion?
It could be a discussion. The only problem, Jed, is,
and they would be the heavy underdogs, by the way.
Yeah,
in that series.
They would. Kawhi is, like Eli Manning, like he had 2 great playoff runs and then a lot of gaps.
Yeah,
in there
it's not fair to Kawhi.
Wasn't that great? Well, okay.
He's still he's still an a high level top 5 all-star when he's in the non-championship seasons.
Yeah,
Eli Manning was a jag when they weren't winning championships.
Well, no, he led the league in interceptions. I guess that's something, right?
Yeah, that's good.
That's something. You led the league in something. Um, pick a couple actresses that won a lot of Academy Awards. Who just won Best Actress recently
Um,
for Nomadland?
McDermott,
Right.
Frances McDermott.
Frances McDormand. Okay, she's got 3 Oscars.
Yes.
Right. She's got 3 Best Actress Oscars. Meryl Streep has 2. Now, I know you're not a big Meryl Streep fan, but the consensus is Meryl Streep's the greatest actress of all time, even though Frances McDormand has 3 Best Actress Oscars compared to Meryl Streep's 2.
But say Frances McDormand and Meryl Streep were in the same movie and they both got nominated for Best Actress, and Frances McDormand won. That's sort of what like a finals matchup between the Clippers and the Nets would be if Kawhi were able to beat Durant. I'm not saying I would put him over. I'm saying, does it become an interesting discussion?
Oh, could be. Sure. I mean, 2 years ago, wasn't the discussion Kawhi's the best player in the league now after he won in Toronto, even though I still think
he's
Kyle
been on
Lowry,
considerably worse teams than Durant.
Who, Kawhi?
Yeah.
Kawhi was in San Antonio, Jet, for the first 7-8 years of his career.
Yeah, but those were not as good as the Warriors teams.
They won a championship. They were always in contention. I'm not saying they were as good as the Warriors, but he's never been on a bad team. Kawhi's never been on a bad team.
But look at that Raptors team compared to this Nets team, Sap.
No, but Durant, and again, Durant got hurt in the finals, as did Clay, and that's the big reason Toronto won that championship. And I still think Kyle Lowry should have been the MVP of that series, not Kawhi. I don't think Kawhi was great in that series. I thought Lowry or Siakam could have easily won MVP. And I still think when you go back to 2014, they had to give it to someone on San Antonio. So they gave it to Kawhi because supposedly he shut LeBron down, although LeBron averaged 29, 9, and 9, which I guess that's shutting him down. No, the discussion will be there because there's always recency bias. Now people are talking about, okay, who are the 5 best players in the league? And now they're leaving LeBron out of the discussion because now he's not playing. So, you can have that discussion. Who's the 5 best players still playing? Those are probably the 2 best players, right? I mean, it would be Durant, Kawhi, in that order for me. But yeah, it will be a discussion, sure, because it's always a discussion. But Kawhi has so many gaps where, like, he missed the season, so did Durant. But he was a good, not a great player. I mean, Durant pretty much from the get-go has been a great player. He's been in the discussion of being, say, the 2nd best player in the league for a decade now, whereas Kawhi, he's kind of eased into this, whereas Durant pretty quickly was in that discussion.
Yeah, I just look at this Nets team as the potential to be considered an all-time great team. We already know that the Warriors were an all-time great team. I don't think that's the final Spurs team that Kawhi won a championship on, or the Raptors are even in the top 50 NBA championship teams.
But are those super teams because of Durant? I mean, there's a big reason that they're super teams when he's the best player. Now, I know he went to a 73-9 team. That's
yeah, that was already a super
great team. That was already a super team, but they did lose in the finals to LeBron. And then from what we hear, Draymond Green was on the phone about 2 minutes after Game 7 crying to Durant, you got to come join us. And the rest is history.
Yeah. All right. So, this is gearing up to be not the series we were thinking, Sap.
No.
And in fact, it could be Milwaukee's in danger of getting swept here because based off of the fight they've put up, which is none, Brooklyn could just have their way with them. Milwaukee could roll over and die. I hope that's not what happens, but right now, all the indications are that Brooklyn will have no issues with Milwaukee. So let's move over to the West, where Phoenix didn't really have any issues, especially late in the game over Denver, as they win Game 1, 122-105. Just a really well-rounded game by the Suns. All 5 of their starters score in double digits, Sap. Chris Paul played very well. DeAndre Ayton played well. Miles Bridges gave them a big boost. Devin Booker was good. I mean, not great, but they didn't really need anybody to be great. They were just all solid.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, this almost felt like the Pistons in 04 where all 5 starters contributed. Look, the shot distribution for the Phoenix Suns is incredible. All 5 starters had between 12 and 14 shot attempts. So when you're defending a team like that, you don't know where to go. It's like a lot of leaks on a boat. Where do you start plugging those leaks?
That's like a quarterback who spreads the ball around, right? To all these receivers.
See Tom Brady for the last 20 years. Also, 4 of their 5 starters scored 20 or more points. So, I mean, that's a tough unit to deal with. They also play good defense. That's what I like about this Phoenix team. And a lot of it has to do with Chris Paul. I mean, even though he's 5'11", barely, he's one of the greatest defensive point guards in the history of the sport, maybe the best. You could argue Jason Kidd or whoever else, but I mean,
Gary Payton.
under 6 feet, I think he's the best defensive player in league history. And he sets up that entire defense. And look, if DeAndre Ayton's going to match Nikola Jokic, the Phoenix is going to win the series in 5 games.
Yeah.
Jokic has to dominate that matchup. They were even last night. If you take those 2 players out of the equation, Phoenix is just better.
Yeah. Oh, undoubtedly, Sap. You know, if Ayton plays him to a draw, I mean, I think that they'll win in 4 games. He has to. He can't lose that matchup or draw that matchup. He's got to dominate that matchup, like you said, especially without Jamal Murray. And you know, they didn't get great production out of anybody. Aaron Gordon was pretty good last night. He had 18 points. Michael Porter Jr. only 15. I say only 15. That's like where he averages. He needs to score more in this series. Period. He's got to be in the 20. He's got to be in the 20s. He can't put up 15, which, you know, for a lot of players, it's a fine night. He needs to be the second option. He's the second scoring option this team. He needs to be scoring in the 20s or they have no chance. And he has the ability to do it. I mean, we've seen it. He has the ability to do it, no problem.
In a quarter. He can do that in a quarter.
Phoenix is good defensively. They have Bridges checking him. Bridges is an excellent defensive player. Crowder is checking him too, another excellent defensive player. But 15 is just not going to get the job done if Denver wants to have a chance in this series. And obviously, Jokic has to be able to outplay Ayton. But credit to Ayton, who held his own last night, out-rebounded Jokic. Phoenix just, I mean, like I said, just efficient. Everybody got a chance to contribute. They made timely shots. They didn't let Denver go on any runs. They played just a really good team game of basketball. They're a well-oiled team right now. They don't have anybody to me that's standing out as like, holy crap, this guy is unstoppable. They're really solid where they are right now.
And when need be, they can go to Devin Booker because he put up 47 in the Game 6 clincher over the Lakers. He's got that type of ability. But I think he's now understanding that the best way for this team to win is balance. Right? I mean, he scored 73 points here at the Garden several years ago, and Phoenix got blown out. What good does that do you? Chris Paul, I think, has this team headed in the right direction. He seems to be healthier with that shoulder. Now that can flare up at any moment. But the impressive thing about the Phoenix Suns is that balance, their ability to play defense. You know, they're top 7 in offensive and defensive efficiency this year. I think the only other team that can say that, well, there's 2 other teams in the West that can say that, and that's Utah and the Clippers. So you know that they're going to be in these ball games. The other thing is it is a massive advantage for Phoenix in the backcourt because of the injuries that Denver is dealing with. I mean, Campazzo and Rivers against Paul and Booker, quite frankly, that's a matchup. So if Phoenix even plays to a draw up front, they're going to win the series handily. And again, I think Denver's a team, I give them credit. The 4 teams that made it to the conference finals a year ago, they're the only one that got to the second round this year. The Lakers, Celtics, and Miami got bounced in the first round. But I think Denver at this point, a pretty tough 6-game series against Portland in the first round. I think fatigue's probably going to set in at some point. And look, Jokic didn't miss a game this year. And I think that at some point is going to leave him less than whole. I liked Phoenix to start this series. I like Phoenix to win the West. I think getting through the Lakers, it was a big deal for that organization. And the more Chris Paul gets healthy, I think they're going to be tougher to beat. Again, if they get to the finals and play Brooklyn, it's going to take a miracle for them to beat Brooklyn. And you'd feel bad for Chris Paul if he finally gets to the finals and he's staring at the Brooklyn Nets. Just not your year.
Yeah, I think the 3 most confident teams right now in the playoffs remaining are Brooklyn, obviously, Atlanta, and Phoenix. I think that they're playing with the most confidence right now. By virtue of beating the defending champs, Phoenix should be confident, regardless of the injury situation in LA. Phoenix should feel good about being able to get through that series, and now they're playing, a Nuggets team that's also banged up with injuries, though they have the presumptive MVP. And Phoenix has home court advantage. As they did in the last round, they should be able to win. When you have home court advantage in the playoffs, you should win. Now, they won't if they play Utah in the next round, but they're not looking ahead to that. I think you pointed out well, Sap. The backcourt is such a mismatch. Austin Rivers was on the street just a couple months ago, not with a team. Campazzo isn't really a starter. He's sort of forced into that role because of injuries. So just a massive mismatch. I wonder if Phoenix is able to go up 3-0 in this series, and that's still obviously a ways away. This was game 1. If they would want to get try to buy Chris Paul a game of rest.
They could do that.
Looking out, because I don't think he does look better. I don't think it's an injury that is going to go away by playing. I think he needs, more rest, probably the better. And they're going to need him, whether they play Utah and then if they advance through or the Clippers, and then if they advance past them to probably the Nets, they're going to need Chris Paul as close to 100% as possible to even have a chance.
Yeah, I'd like to be in the room when Monty Williams broaches that conversation with Chris Paul and says, Chris, we're up 3-0. We want to sit you in game 4. That's not going to go well because that guy's the ultimate competitor. It won't.
But again, I do think it might be best for the team because
it would make the most sense. Yeah.
Although you never want no chance against Brooklyn with him less than 90, 95%.
And that's who I'm rooting for right now. Right now, with the Lakers gone, you with the Celtics not being there, and I'm rooting for Milwaukee, Phoenix, and I think Phoenix is going to get there. Milwaukee, up until last night, I thought they'd recover, and they looked just overwhelmed, overmatched in that game against Brooklyn, and they kind of gave up. Now, it's not the Tour de France, so it's 2-0. I get it, but they're going to start at 0-0 when they go to game 3 in Milwaukee. The Bucks are going to have to come out. They're going to have to shoot 3-pointers a lot better than they have so far, which you would think they will be able to do at home. But does Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, are they going to be intimidated by playing in Milwaukee? Hell no. Those are all-time great players. The thing is, the role players play better.
Kyrie didn't play well in Milwaukee last time he played in the playoffs against them.
That's true, but I don't think he wanted to play well in the playoffs.
He did not.
I think he's just fine. Kyrie's in a better headspace now than he was 2 years ago, which is
good for
something
him.
that I don't think Sigmund Freud would even know how to parse or deal with. But and look, there's no pressure on anybody in Brooklyn. Like if Kyrie's having an off night, Durant can say, you know what, my friend, I'll go get 45 tonight and do it efficiently.
Yeah, Durant doesn't have off nights.
He really doesn't. He really doesn't. I don't even know who to compare this guy to. It's scary. Other sports. I've always compared him to Aaron Rodgers because I think Rodgers is the most naturally gifted quarterback I've ever seen. That doesn't mean he's the best quarterback I've ever seen. Tom Brady has 7 Super Bowls. It's almost like this weekend when we were at our friend Chris's, bachelor party, which, we were in Cooperstown, New York, and Chris is like enamored with golf at this point. And he's like, on the heels of Phil Mickelson winning the PGA, I think a couple weeks ago, he's like, Phil Mickelson is the most gifted golfer I've ever seen. Doesn't mean he's better than Tiger Woods, but natural talent. Phil Mickelson's probably more talented than Tiger, but Tiger was so driven and was constantly in great shape, and his whole life was golf, and he was clutch. But in terms of natural talent, Mickelson was probably the more talented golfer. Kind of like that and I said it's kind of like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, right? Like Rodgers is more naturally gifted, but Brady's got 7 Super Bowls. And you maybe get this conversation with Durant and LeBron. Maybe Durant's a more natural scorer than LeBron. I still think LeBron just does more than Durant, right? I mean, at his apex.
I don't know if there's ever been a more naturally gifted basketball player than LeBron.
Yeah, I think he's the most. I think he's the most talented, right? Just pure basketball. When you talk about like what can't he do, like pretty much.
That's why we say no kids, like he's popular, but no kids like are emulating him on the court because he's just like, no one's that freakishly talented, built like.
No, that big. And although last night, Dan Sileo
he's a basketball robot.
He really is. I mean,
Dan Sileo is an idiot. Dan Sileo.
What an idiot. I mean, I sent you that tweet and it was like, he's saying that LeBron James is basically Carmelo, but with the rings. And you went back and said, well, that's kind of the idea, isn't it? To win rings. And I'm like, the only thing those two guys have in common are their physiques. They're both like 6'9",
so what is
255, 260. Is it like he's not a clutch player?
Is Tom Brady
that part of it?
Is Tom Brady Ryan Tannehill, but with rings? Like what are we?
The rings, right?
What the hell are we talking? He's Tony Romo, but with rings. Like, well, right. The rings kind of are important.
The rings are important.
It's sort of the end game in all these seasons.
And he's trying to like. Those two guys have nothing in common. I think LeBron James wouldn't even want to talk to Carmelo.
They're the same body type. That's the whole thing.
Same body type. That is it. Like their games aren't even similar, but the same body type. And also like politically, they're way off from each other.
No,
Carmelo's a conservative.
It's stupid.
LeBron's very socially conscious. I mean, Carmelo, from what I understand, and again, who can verify this stuff, but I think it's something that most people agree on. Didn't he rape a 13-year-old girl or a 14-year-old girl back years ago?
Done bad things,
and failed to support the child. I mean, LeBron's
who ended
a family
up making
man.
The NFL, I think the kid.
And LeBron's a family guy who I think basically is a good guy. I think sometimes he tries to be you
No, I
know,
think
the man in the
Cilio's
black
trying to
hat.
make an on-court comparison. I mean, the off-court stuff, obviously, but the on-court stuff. I mean, that's stupid. It's a dumb argument. It's if you're saying he's blank without the rings are important. They're kind of the end all be all in sports.
Yeah.
That's all we compare things to.
The rings are important only if LeBron. But here's the thing with LeBron, because he's treated differently. I don't know how we brought LeBron into this. I know tomorrow in the podcast we're going to talk about the Lakers and what they need to do to get back into contention. But it seems like the rings are important to everybody except LeBron. Like, he has 4, which is actually more than Bird, but yet people say Bird was better. Like, no. So that's the discussion you have.
It, but you can't. He's better than Bird. He's past Bird. You can't. I love the Celtics with every fiber of my being. I love Larry Bird. I am not stupid enough to say that Bird is better than LeBron. Because at this point in their careers, it's stupid to say it. I honestly believe that. And this is coming from the biggest Celtics honk going. I have a picture of Larry Bird right behind me. It's stupid to say it. Honestly, Sap, there's no argument anymore.
And I saw every one of Larry Bird's games, many of them in person. I got to interview him countless times. He was a great guy to deal with. The game would end about a half hour after the game. He'd come out to the locker room fully clothed with a can of beer in his hand, because Larry liked his beer, and back then so did I. And he'd give you 20 minutes. We'd all get around him, ask any questions. He answered them. He was a peach to deal with. He really was. He's phenomenal. I've maintained that his peak is as great as any player I've ever seen. The only problem is his peak was 8-9 years. LeBron's peak is now approaching like 17, 18 years, right? So that's a major difference. But no, at his peak, Larry Bird was as good as it gets.
You know how I feel about the Celtics, and you know how I feel about LeBron. He's not my favorite dude in the world, but I mean, I have eyes. I can see what this is. He's better. He's past Larry Bird. It infuriates me as much when people say, "Oh, well, I still think Joe Montana is better than Tom Brady." Well, then you're stupid. No, well, then you're stupid. Not. I'm sorry. There's just no discussion anymore. He's long since passed him.
He's lapping people at this point.
LeBron about 4 or 5 years ago passed Larry Bird.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It pains me to say it. It's true. It's the truth. I'm not just because I love Larry Bird and the Celtics, I'm not going to be just ignorant to facts. That's ridiculous.
When he won that third title, the first in Cleveland, I think he surpassed Bird at that point, because they each had 3 titles, but then the rest of the resume favored LeBron James. And I've always maintained that what made Michael Jordan and LeBron James kind of better than everybody else is their ability to play defense. And then because of their extreme athleticism at the end of a game, they just had more in the tank than, say, Magic or Bird or just about anybody else had, right? When you get to the final 2 or 3 minutes.
No excuse for being ignorant.
No, you can have your favorite player and still say, look, Aaron Rodgers is my favorite player. I love watching him play. I think he's eminently more fun to watch than Tom Brady, but Tom Brady's the superior quarterback. I mean, Rodgers has had opportunities to beat him last year in the playoffs, and he didn't exactly play well in the fourth quarter of that NFC Championship game. Could have played better. Maybe they would have won. So, yeah, you're an idiot if you come out and just defend people. It's like Bruins fans constantly defending Tuukka Rask. It's like they try to tell me that he's, one of the great goalies of all time. I'm like, well, no, he's very good, but in big moments, he's not always there for you. So,
no.
You have to be fair. That's why what we do is important, because we bring a perspective of at least being rational about these things, right? We're not just here, waving pom-poms. I mean,
the Dan Cilio thing, I mean, he's an idiot, and it's idiotic.
Taught by Jerry Callahan tweeting out that LeBron's the least popular player in the league in places like Wyoming, Utah, Nebraska, Kansas, Idaho.
It's selective data, Sap. He is the least popular player in the league, but he's also the most popular player in the league. So, you're kind of omitting a big piece of that.
You don't remember Howard Cosell, but Howard Cosell was always voted the most popular sportscaster and the least popular sportscaster because everybody knew him. Like, how many NBA fans are in South Dakota? The one player they know is LeBron James, and he's polarizing, so some love him, some hate him. Yeah, I kept looking at going, boy, this doesn't look too racist, does it? Like, oh, my God, people hate LeBron James. Yeah, but people love him as well.
Yeah, he's the most popular and the least popular. That doesn't surprise me. That's typically how it goes.
That takes a lot of talent, doesn't it, to be both? That's pretty impressive. Well, we had a president for 4 years that was similar.
That's true. I would venture to guess Brady is probably the same.
Probably, yeah. Not to quite the same fever pitch. And even though football's the biggest sport in this country
more
by
involved
far,
politically. That's
more involved politically. And basketball players are bigger stars. They're out there in a tank top and shorts. And they play 82 games.
Football
and it's an international sport.
U.S. thing.
We see Brady pop in every Sunday. He's still in a helmet. I still maintain that, like, lapsed football fans last year turned into the Super Bowl and said, Brady's with Tampa now? Like, when did this happen? Like, and they were like, okay, I'll root for him again, or I'll root against him again. But yeah, I mean, the Cilio and Callahan, not surprising that those guys were tweeting out stuff like that, because, that's kind of their brand.
Great.
Good
and
luck.
Now you've made me defend LeBron. Thanks, Sap. All right.
I am talented.
Very talented. You keep getting me to do it somehow. All right, let's get into these games tonight before we wrap things up. 2 games on the slate for tonight, one in the East, one in the West. Game 2, Hawks-Sixers. The Sixers are at home, and they are down 1-0. The spread in this one, Sap, has Philadelphia favored by 6 points. How do you see this one playing out?
Well, Zigzag has been zagging a lot lately. Not good.
No.
Last night, Zigzag had Milwaukee winning that game, and as a 1.5 point dog, they only lost by 39. So that was certainly
Vegas cleaned up on that one. Yep.
Yeah, if people were going with the zigzag. It's kind of interesting. The game last night was Brooklyn favored by 1.5, and when they go to Milwaukee, the Bucks right now are a 4-point favorite. Vegas is saying that Milwaukee's better than Brooklyn. I don't know what they're watching, or maybe there's some unnatural money coming in on the Bucks that impacts the lines. Like, there's someone out there. Maybe there's a lot of money coming from Greece supporting Giannis that he's going to end up winning this series. That could be the case.
Greek mafia money.
Yeah, exactly. I like Philly tonight. They have to win this game. They can't get down 0-2, then go on the road with Embiid still less than 100%, although he was dominant in game 1. They're going to have to deal with Trae Young, though. Philadelphia's going to have to figure out a way to combat Trae Young. Now, Ben Simmons was talking about that he'll check him, which I think he did in parts of game 1. Will he be allowed to play physical? I mean, Trae Young's 6'1"? No, yeah. It's the NBA. You're right. You pointed that out about a half hour ago. No one gets to play physical. I mean, talk about a physical mismatch in terms of size and strength. Trae Young and Ben Simmons. I mean, that almost looks
Trae
like
Young's going to have to dribble under Ben Simmons.
He probably could. I mean, Ben Simmons, I don't think we realize how big he is. He's 6'10", 250. He's huge. He's like a little taller than LeBron, and he's not that much thinner. I mean, he's jacked. And he's a great athlete, and you got Trae Young at 6'1", who, quite frankly, is punking the NBA right now. I mean, it's like he's scoring 35 and laughing in their faces.
I might get a Trae Young jersey.
Oh, he's really grown on me as well. Again, like I said, he's not quite the shooter Steph Curry is. No one is, but I think he's a better passer.
He's going to get a big sneaker deal out of this, is my prediction.
And again, the kids are going to love him, right?
Like, the NBA is going to push him. They're going to push him.
Yeah, they are. It's going to be him and Luka, because they were in the same draft. They were technically kind of traded for each other.
They were,
and it worked out good for both teams. I think Trae Young fits in Atlanta. I think Luka fits in Dallas.
I don't think either of them would have been as successful the other way around.
Yep, exactly. Maybe the teams can merge and you'll have both of them on the court together.
That'd be a very good team.
That would be scary. Then maybe someone could beat Brooklyn, but they'd still be one player short of beating Brooklyn. But Philly has to win this game, and I expect they will. They've got to make the adjustments defensively so Trae Young doesn't just run laps around them.
Yeah, well, we know, and we talked at length about Durant being unstoppable, but the most unstoppable player in the NBA is actually on Philly, because I mean, nobody can guard Embiid.
No.
We've talked about this about 1,000 times this year. The game he went up against the best defensive center in the league, Rudy Gobert, he just ate his lunch. So Embiid, and he played great last game. If he's 100%, which I don't think he is, but he's close enough, he should be able to put up 35, 40 on this team anytime he wants to. And then it's a matter of the rest of the guys on Philadelphia living up to their end of the bargain. You'd have to have Tobias Harris have a nice game. Ben Simmons needs to hit his free throws at least at a reasonable clip. No one's expecting him to go 80% from the line. Just be respectable. 3 of 10 last game is not respectable. And then, just do a little bit of a better job on Trae Young. I don't think that the adjustments need to be massive in order for Philadelphia to win this game, as opposed to the Brooklyn-Milwaukee series, where Milwaukee has to overhaul everything they've done in order to win. Philadelphia is close enough, and they're the better team, in my opinion, that they can make the minor tweaks in order to win this game. So I'll take them with the 6 points. I think that they'll win without too much trouble tonight. But I think that Atlanta still has a game that they're going to take away from them. So I still see this one going 6.
Oh, yeah, without question. And I think we talked about that before the series. Atlanta, under Nate McMillan's 32-12 since he took over. I mean, that's basically winning 3 out of every 4 games. That's damn good. And they made short work of the Knicks. Look, they're more talented than the Knicks, and I wasn't surprised that they won that series over New York. I'm a little surprised that it only went 5 games. But Atlanta's been one of the best teams in basketball the second half of the season, so I expect them to continue to do that. Can they win this series? Yeah, they can win this series, especially if they win tonight. They'll take a stranglehold on this, but I expect Philadelphia to come up big tonight and to be dominant as usual. And again, this is going to fall on those perimeter shooters. Is Danny Green going to shoot better from 3? Is Seth Curry going to have a big game? Is Tobias Harris going to do what he can do? And as you said, Ben Simmons has to shoot better from the free throw line. The only problem is Jet so far in the postseason, he's shooting at like 34% from the free throw line.
He's going to make it impossible to have him in at the end of games. I mean, just like you said in the last game, they're just going to hack him, which you should. That's the best strategy for him because he's a crappy free throw shooter. Why not?
And
I'd rather him shoot free throws than the ball even touch Embiid's hands.
No, because he's going to score like every time he gets it. And the thing about Simmons, it's not like he's a power forward. He's kind of built like a power forward. He's their primary ball handler. So it's easy to foul him. You get him the ball and you foul him, and chances are, at best, he's going to make 1 out of 2. Someone's got to get a hold of Ben Simmons and say, look, you can become one of the 5 best players in the league. Literally, realistically, he can be one of the 5 best players in the league if he can establish some sort of consistent mid-range shot. I'm not even asking him to take threes and be consistent from the free throw line. Look,
shoot him underhand, Steph. Shoot him underhand.
That may be the case. If he can shoot as efficiently as Giannis from mid-range and the free throw line, and that's not asking a lot because Giannis isn't all that great from there. He can be as good as Giannis because he can rebound not quite as much as Giannis because he doesn't play as much close to the basket. He's a better passer than Giannis, and I think he's a more versatile defender. He could be a top 5 player. He's that good. He didn't get picked first by accident. I don't even know what to compare it to in another sport. You can't say it's a quarterback that can't throw. I mean, that's Tim Tebow. Obviously, he doesn't play at quarterback yet, unless Jacksonville's lost their mind. I guess
would it be a hitter who's really good but can't hit a certain pitch?
That could be it.
Can't hit a curveball or something.
Can't hit a curveball. I mean, I'm not gonna say Jackie Bradley Jr. I mean, Jackie Bradley Jr. is a great fielder, but he hits 160. And, it's not like Simmons doesn't score. He does everything. He rebounds, he passes, he defends. When he goes to the basket, he's unstoppable. It's just he can't shoot.
Right, and that's the closest thing I can think of off the top of my head.
That's probably it. Or a wide receiver who gets open and drops the ball occasionally. And you go, damn, why are we throwing it to him? It's
maddening because you're right. His ceiling is so high, and it doesn't look like he's at all attempted to improve the deficiencies in his game. I haven't seen him take a noticeable leap since he's really come into the NBA.
No,
except for this defense. His defense has always been there, but he's gotten even better at it. But nothing else. He hasn't really improved at anything else. I mean, he was really good from day one, but he hasn't improved at anything else. Again, listen. The underhanded free throw thing. It seems like a joke. It works. People would laugh to start. They wouldn't laugh when you start shooting 80% from the free throw line. Then the laughter quickly stops, and then you can't foul the guy anymore.
Hey, Rick Barry shot over 90% in his career, or close to it, shooting underhanded.
Now, he's gone around the world preaching this. Rick Barry's a Hall of Famer, and he preaches this. So maybe you should listen to the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're a great shooter, if you're Larry Bird or Kevin Durant or whoever, then okay, shoot however you want. Kevin Durant, Larry Bird, and Steph Curry could probably shoot 80% left-handed. I mean, that's how great those guys are.
So prideful that he won't attempt to make his game better because he's scared of how it'll look?
Well, some of it's vanity. I mean, Jim Rice, who was a great player for the Boston Red Sox for 15 years, he's in the Hall of Fame. He wouldn't wear glasses when he hit. I just wonder if he had worn glasses, what kind of career he would have had. He had a great career. He's in the Hall of Fame, but Lord knows how much better he would have been. They didn't have like corrective eye surgery like they have now. So, it just didn't want to wear glasses. He was too vain to do that. It's not the most macho thing to shoot free throws underhanded. Wilt tried it. Didn't work for him either. I mean, Wilt and Bill Russell were essentially 50% free throw shooters. Shaq maybe a little bit better, but those are 3 all-time greats. But this guy's at like 34% in the postseason. He's at another level of suck. So
and he doesn't have the thing with like Wilt or Shaq with the gigantic. I mean, he's got big hands, but he should be able to. Underhand should work for him. I mean, I'm willing to send him a message saying, Ben, I hate the Sixers. I don't particularly like you, but listen, for the good of the game, shoot free throws underhanded.
Yeah, just send one to whatever Kardashian he's dating at the moment. I don't know.
Yeah.
Devin Booker's with one of them. He's with the other, and God bless them all. Good to be young and good looking.
Yeah, let's just stay away from Jason Tatum. Sap. Okay, let's go to the Clippers and Jazz, who have their game 1 tonight. And a series that I don't really think anybody feels particularly confident about one way or the other than Skip Bayless, who's already said the Clippers are going to win the championship, even though he had them eliminated in game 5 of that past series. So I would say don't listen to what Skip Bayless has to say.
No,
the game
Skip
is in Utah. Go ahead, Sap.
Oh, no, Skip loves that Denver backcourt of Campazzo and Rivers. He thinks that's a great backcourt. So
Skip is out to lunch.
Sometimes.
Utah has home court advantage throughout the playoffs. They had the best record in the league, basically wire to wire. So they're at home tonight. The Clippers are 3-point underdogs in this game. Sap, go ahead, give your pick.
I like Utah in the series, but I like the Clippers tonight. And I'll tell you why. Everybody's picking Utah tonight, which would lead you to believe the Clippers will win, because when everyone agrees, then we're always wrong. The Clippers are coming off an emotional Game 7 win over Dallas on Sunday. Utah's at home. They've had ample rest. They won their series in 5 games over Memphis. The clincher was at home, so there's no travel involved. So it would lead you to believe Utah's going to come out and blow doors tonight over the LA Clippers. I think the Clippers, because of all the emotion and how stressful that series was, will get there, not realize they're tired, and come in and win game 1. Then I think in game 2, you'll see a Utah blowout. It's just kind of a reverse psychology. I like the Clippers tonight, but I like Utah in the series.
I found it funny that a lot of people were saying Clippers exercise their demons. You know, they win this game 7 in the first round. No, the exercising the demons is getting to the conference finals, which they've never been to before in the history of their franchise.
Incredible.
Winning this round is exercising the demons. Winning the first round is nothing for the Clippers. Have even been they've even been able to accomplish that before. So no, that's nothing. I just Utah has been virtually unbeatable at home when Donovan Mitchell plays. He's playing. He's presumably much closer to 100% now than at the start of the playoffs, because they've had this nice rest period because they were able to take care of Memphis. They gentlemen swept them. I don't see Utah losing at home. So I'm going to take the Jazz tonight, and I will take them with the 3 points because it's just not that many.
Yeah, it's not that many points. I'll go with the Clippers to pull off the upset tonight, but still lose in the series. And look, what's going to satisfy Steve Ballmer? Anything short of a championship going to really please him? I mean, if they lose to Brooklyn in the finals, they have to get to the finals. But do you think Steve Ballmer's really a reasonable guy? I mean, he's worth $80 billion. He's won with everything he's touched. If they get to the finals and lose, he's going to be pissed. Right,
yeah, still. Reasonable, no, but he's not stupid. And I think knowing that what Brooklyn is, because we're just assuming Brooklyn's going to get there at this point. I mean, I've been saying this for months, and I think you're starting to come around to it. I think what else are you supposed to do with the Clippers? You can't just suddenly say, hey, we're going to add Giannis to this team and really try to compete with them. I mean, there's nothing that really can be done if you're going up against a juggernaut.
They have a big 2, whereas Brooklyn has a big 3. And now we're seeing those Brooklyn role players play better and better and better. And part of it is because Durant stretches the floor to the point where all of a sudden the likes of Joe Harris or Blake Griffin have plenty of space to operate, and they go ahead and do what they do. Mike James was a player that came on board midway late in the season and has been spectacular. Like every team in the league had an opportunity to get him, and give Brooklyn credit for adding those nice pieces. I remember when Blake Griffin went to Brooklyn in the buyout market and Andre Drummond went to the Lakers in the buyout market. I'm like, well, I think the Lakers may have improved more so than Brooklyn. No, not at all, because Andre Drummond, although he can rebound, he seemed to be in the way of LeBron James and Anthony Davis. And Blake Griffin's kind of reinventing himself on the fly here.
No, he was intentionally dogging it. He was always this.
And he was dogging it. That's the difference between Drummond, who I think continued to play hard for Cleveland, but they wanted to get rid of his contract. Whereas Blake Griffin, he just dogged it in Detroit. And again, that's another reason why you will be rooting, and I think everybody's rooting against the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, the last team I want to see win the title is Brooklyn. The second team I want to see win the title, the one that would turn me off the most, is the Clippers. Anybody else I'll be fine with. I can live with the other 6 teams winning it. The unfortunate thing is most likely Brooklyn's going to win the title, so I'm going to have to deal with that if that happens.
Yeah, it's interesting too. The whole if Phoenix is to get there too, it's two former teammates of Brooklyn that Chris Paul
Yep.
hates because remember he also did not like Blake Griffin. We know it didn't end well with James
No,
Harden, but remember it really didn't end well with Blake Griffin. So
no.
it'd be the Chris Paul revenge tour. He would really be motivated to beat that team, but nobody's beating that team. I just don't think so. But
You know what?
so you have the Clippers tonight. I have the Jazz. Yes, Ab?
Yeah. One final thought, and I was thinking about this watching the games last night. Could you picture Chris Paul and Kevin Durant on the same team? How unstoppable that would have been, in all seriousness, because I think Durant doesn't need to be the alpha. Like, he's just content to play basketball. Like, he'll go get his 32, 8 and 8,
Yeah,
or
but does he
whatever he
like to
puts up
get
for
barked
numbers.
at?
I also think Chris Paul's smart enough to know who to bark at, know who not to bark at. Like, he didn't really bark at James Harden all that much. James Harden isn't Kevin Durant. Like, I'm just thinking from a pure aesthetic standpoint, Chris Paul and Kevin Durant on the same team. Holy
Yeah, you'd think it'd be really
crap.
good. I think you're right. Chris Paul might be able to know who to do that to and who not to do that to, especially later in his career. I don't think he in LA it fell apart
It
because
didn't work.
He
Yeah.
didn't know how to do that. But I think you saw, Draymond Green is a leader and he's, the guy who sort of barks at people in Golden State, and we saw what happened with Draymond and Kevin Durant. So Durant's sensitive. We know that. So I think he's better just left alone. Like Kyrie's not going to bother him. James Harden's not going to bother him. Steve Nash is definitely not going to bother him. I think that's when Durant says best. Just like leave him alone. Don't tell him what to do. He'll figure it out. Doesn't need a coach. Doesn't need a player to tell him what to do.
Perfect definition of being a mercenary, right? Because that's what a mercenary does.
Absolutely,
like, it's like a hitman that comes in and no one ever really meets him. They get a hold of him through a third source, and he comes in and he's got his gun and he takes care of the job and goes away and gets paid later. That's Kevin Durant just likes playing basketball. I don't think he needs all of the other stuff, like being the leader, the spokesman. He's even uncomfortable in interviews now. He's kind of was an asshole to the reporter after the game last night, but then he caught himself, and I think he probably felt bad and said thank you for the compliment and much love. I mean, all the reporter asked him is, it's 2 years to the day when you blew out your Achilles and you had your calf injury. Did you think you'd be in this spot 2 years later? And he goes, is that a real question? Like, obviously great athletes don't doubt themselves, but you could be a little bit more humble about that. But then he kind of caught himself. He is trying to be the bad guy when I think naturally he's not. LeBron went through this too. LeBron, was being painted as the man in the black hat because he left Cleveland and went to Miami. He was never comfortable with that either. I think they're both, guys that should just embrace whoever they are rather than trying to be something else.
Yeah. I think that's a fair point, Sap. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us for the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. You can find this podcast on our YouTube at youtube.com/JetStryer, or you can find it wherever podcasts are found if you prefer the audio version. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about some of these eliminated teams, specifically the Lakers. Sap is going to finally do his postmortem for his beloved Los Angeles Lakers and LeBron James and try to figure out what went wrong and how they can fix it for next year. We'll also touch on the Blazers and what they're going to do if they're going to blow things up in the offseason, and if the Mavericks are going to get any help for Luka Doncic. So make sure you check that out tomorrow. That podcast will drop around 1:30-ish tomorrow. So make sure you check us out there, and we'll talk to you then. See you, everybody.